Right. We have a core public services which are free to all. There's some which are needs tested or means tested, and we all have different views of what should be free to all. But let's have a look at, I think these are the obvious ones that we think should be free anyway. The blue light services, education, etc. So let's move on. But as the resources tighten, how do we prioritise, and what could governments means test? Now, these are just examples. I'll just pick them out on a random basis. We've got 16,700 bus passes issued, free bus passes. Prescription charges, £17.5 million, the cost of dispensing those prescriptions. We get back, in terms of fees, £700. Free eyesight tests, £760,000. Now, why should I, just because of my age, get a free prescription? I'm still working? Well, some would say not, but I'm still being paid anyway. And we just argue the point, or just deal with the issue, should the better off make a bigger contribution? So that's what we're looking at. So with that, I'm just going to ask the question, government should expand the use of means testing. That's an interesting split, that.
Oh, yeah. Now that's different.
That's different from the previous meetings we've had. Completely different. So obviously I haven't done a good job.
Greater uncertainty, you've expressed greater uncertainty than the average meeting about the concept of means testing. Okay, I find this section the most difficult, but it hopefully answers some of the issues, some of the questions that seem to be haunting the room. We've talked about technology and how that should work. We've talked about the welfare state. What we seem to be doing is being slicker and less sensitive. This is about the other side of the coin. We talked at the beginning about the three priorities: growing the economy, balancing the budget, protecting the vulnerable. Well, okay, some elements of our economy have been in recession, some have continued to grow, but the net, the aggregate, has been that we've managed to continue to grow, whereas, for example, Jersey, as Eddie alluded to, has been in recession for some time, and Guernsey's bounced along the bottom. We're very close to balancing the current account on the budget. That's the first stage. So we are achieving two of the three fundamental targets, aims that we set out, but this one is without doubt the most difficult one. It really has tested us. And the truth of the matter is that we're not doing the job well enough. I focused on this pretty intensely when I learned to understand it better when I was in Minister of Social Care. And it truly worried me more than any other single thing. How could we protect the vulnerable? We were talking earlier on about this clunky system. How are we going to see people who are vulnerable, and what were we going to do about it? And in the end, I brought it down to two concepts, two reasons, really. This is a bit Rumfeldy, you know, the known knowns and the unknown knowns. Well, this is our version of it. Two reasons. Identifying needs in vulnerability, needs that we see, but to which we don't respond properly. And secondly, needs we cannot see. So we have this big welfare system that's paying out significant sums of money, but there are certain things that happen, certain individuals living certain lifestyles that we can see, but we don't respond to as well as we should. We just simply categorize them in certain ways and leave it at that. And then even more worryingly, we have needs that we cannot see, hidden needs hidden vulnerabilities. So we've discussed this evening so far some of the areas that we all are determined will remain free at the point of delivery, all those services that we've come to expect within a welfare state that we want to protect. We've touched on means testing. So it's all about needs that we need to focus on. So turning to that first reason. Needs that we see, but to which we don't respond properly. Now, this is where it gets difficult. You've heard many of us talking about how government is siloed. I mean, here's some elements of government. And you've probably heard us talking about the single legal entity that we're trying to move towards. But at the moment, government, the Isle of Man government per se doesn't exist. What exists is a series of departments with their own minister who was ultimately responsible and chief executive. And each has its own set of rules and regulations and forms and means of access to services. And you vote us in, or not, as MHKs. And I want to just talk for a minute about the experience of canvassing. I've canvassed 3 times. I didn't get in the first time, and the second 2 times, obviously, I did. And I liked going around, knocking on doors and talking to people about what I believed in and what I wanted to do, and listen to what other people wanted us to do. But a lot of the time, and ask any MHK this, and they will tell you something similar, that the statement often made was, well, in my case, yes, Chris, we get that, you're interested in that, yeah. But what we want to know is, will you look after us if something happens to us? In other words, people were individualizing the choice of the person that they wished to elect. Now, some would say this is controversial. I don't think it is. A number of MHKs continue to get elected because they recognize that there's a significant degree of dysfunctionality in the way government works, and they ensure their re-election by helping the individual steer around dysfunctionality of government. And if they do that often enough, they ensure they get re-elected. But does that solve anything? Does that deal with the fundamental dysfunctionality of government? And the answer is it doesn't. And as far as I'm concerned, the creation of the Cabinet Office in the centre was to address this, to say, in a broad sense, what's wrong with government and how are we going to fix it so that it works for the individual, rather than relying on an MHK to take you round the system. Why should it be that you need to contact an MHK to get a service that otherwise you wouldn't get because nobody understood your need? So effectively, we're struggling with a system of individual silos which don't see the person as a whole, as a holistic being, if you like. And if I dare quote Sir John Elvidge, he said the trouble with government is that it wants to deliver its services vertically, and it does, and that's what we do here, individually. One bit doesn't see the next. It's what happens. But Elvidge says that what people want, and his phraseology he uses, is people want to receive them horizontally. In other words, they want to be seen as an individual in a holistic sense. At the moment, education sees education, the education of the individual. Social care sees social issues. Health sees separate issues. But what happens when where those things should be brought together? And we're coming to the points that you've made earlier, the questions you made. How do we get to a point where government can understand the individual better? So this categorization of the benefits system, where you can have this in that box and you can have that in that one, and you have a set of departments that don't see the whole person. Is it any wonder that government doesn't get it right? So that's what we're trying to deal with here. Look at the long-term unemployed as an example. Up to recently, if you were deemed to be long-term unemployed, you got unemployment benefit, and that was it. The government didn't do any more. You were just categorised long-term unemployed and left to be long-term unemployed. That's a huge cost to the individual, and it's a huge cost to government. People who have been unemployed for longer than 6 months, their skills may not match. That's what a long-term unemployed is classed as. After 6 months, people without work, the chances of finding a job decreases significantly because an employer becomes concerned about taking somebody on who's been long unemployed for some time, because well, actually there must be something wrong, and are they demotivated? But people who are long-term unemployed do become demotivated. Their health decreases, their contribution to society, their self-worth drops. Up to now, we've been a government that just simply says that person's in that box, pay them the benefit. We need to turn government upside down. We need to put the individual at the centre of our concern and focus. I was talking earlier on about in the private sector, if you want to succeed, you must know your customer. It's about time government understood individual need. And when I was in social care, that was the thing that drove me insane. How on earth are we going to achieve this? How do we put you first? I'm going to ask you a question here at this stage. And it says, government must radically restructure itself to meet individual needs better. Do you think that's a reasonable statement for me to make? Well, again, you're a remarkably different audience tonight. Young carers. Young carers provide support often to their parents or siblings. They help the person or persons to deal with issues of daily living, physical and emotional. We think, note the word think, we think there are about 200 known young carers in the Isle of Man. Actually, there's more than that. There are people we can't see. Young carers receive some support from government, but if they're under 16, there's no financial support. But outside of the government support, they will often lag behind, lag behind at school, suffer from health problems, and can be socially isolated. Most of the support comes from the voluntary sector or the Children's Services Division of DHSC. This means that our child isn't seen in other parts of government, and this is the point I was making. You don't have to restructure government, you have to have professionals working in a different way than they are at present. So it's not about the big top-end stuff, it's about how do we see these young people. Not just the ones that we know about that we're not seeing properly but we see, but also the ones that we don't see. And there are all sorts of areas, and we've just picked out one here, where we don't see vulnerability. It drove me crazy when I was in social care. And it's not about scrutiny, because we're not doing it properly in the first place. We're not bringing professionals together in an appropriate way. And one of the initiatives that I started off when I was in social care was Team Around the School. And it nearly got an award at the annual enterprise and what's it called? Awards, yeah, annual awards. So what needs to change? Communities and government need to work better together to address problems earlier. It's early intervention. This is what this is about. Maybe I've misled you tonight about this concept of restructuring. It's about how people work together. Here are the silos. And forgive me, voluntary sector's not up there. It should be. I humble myself before you. The third sector and should be there as well. It's not. Forgive me. It should be. But these are the silos. This is the level of restructuring or working together that I'm talking about. Process in your case. social housing, social adult care, older people's care, primary health care, education, post office. We don't talk about post office tonight. Police, and team around the family. Now, the point is, we need to find ways, though all those individuals, whether educationalists, they'll have their professional bodies that will scrutinize their competence, whether you're a district nurse or a social worker, and you will continue to be financed through your department, but what we haven't been doing is working in the community with the third sector properly, because once you start doing that, within a community you have a much better chance of knowing vulnerability when it's starting to develop and intervene at an early stage to assist that individual or family to improve their circumstances such that they can regain their independence and self-worth and confidence. And silo government does not do that. Welfare system categorizing people in boxes does not do that. So we have to change the welfare state, and we have to change the way people work together if we're going to capture and intervene at an early stage and help people in their life ambitions. I believe early intervention in the community would better protect the vulnerable. You're going to vote on that for me, please? That's it. Thank you very much. Some of your answers tonight deviate from what we've seen, and we need to think about that.